Usually when I cruise, I'm perfectly happy with an inside cabin, but I'm currently on a ship where I'm trying something different. On my last cruise before this one, I booked an inside cabin. We had rough weather and 8 days at sea, so not having any access to fresh air or daylight wasn't the best. I didn't want to repeat that, so when it came to picking my cabin for this cruise, I booked an ocean view cabin, which is a category I never normally consider. My hope was that this would at least give us some daylight and that it wouldn't be too expensive. I've spent most of the week trying to decide if this cabin was worth the upgrade price from an inside cabin, or if I should have just gone all out and really treated myself to a balcony. Booking a cabin without any outside space definitely was a gamble. Our cruise was heading to the Canary Islands and I was hoping to find some sunshine. I didn't want to miss out on it by not having a balcony, but I really didn't want to spend more than I had to. I booked this cruise quite last minute and I was just hoping for a calm, easy trip. The price to upgrade to a balcony was half of what I paid for the entire cruise, and I just couldn't justify that. I knew that this ship was almost 30 years old, which is really quite old for a cruise ship, so I was hoping that nothing in the cabin would be broken or damaged. As with every cruise I've ever taken, I'd read reviews about it being grubby and run down, and I just hoped that those weren't true. I didn't want to be in a dirty room for 7 days. To save money, I normally book what is called a guaranteed cabin. That means that the cruise line picks the location of your room for you. This time though, I did not want to risk a location with more movement than necessary because of my last rocky cruise, so I paid £65 to pick a cabin right in the middle. That's $82 and I have never ever paid that before, so I was hoping that it would be worth it. Even if you do pick what looks like the perfect cabin on paper, there's always a risk of bad neighbours or having noise from above or below. I decided to book cabin 2054 down on deck 2. The movement on a cruise is always less in the middle and lower down, so I hoped that that would stop us from feeling any movement if there was any. I'd heard that on the cruise before mine they missed 2 ports due to bad weather, so it was a very real possibility. We embarked the ship around 3 p.m, which meant that our cabins were ready as soon as we stepped on board. We first walked into this big impressive atrium in the middle of the ship, and the bottom level is on deck 4, which meant that we didn't have very far to go down to deck 2. That did of course mean that I would be 7 decks down from the buffet, but I hope that those steps would be worth it. They do have lifts of course, I just try not to use them when I cruise. It didn't take us very long to find our room. The doors definitely did look as though they were 90s originals, but the carpet in the corridor definitely has been changed. We were given our cruise cards in the cruise terminal so we could just walk straight into our room. It is the most exciting feeling. I loved the initial look of the cabin. It felt spacious and very light and bright because of the window. The decor was fairly neutral with a few pops of colour around on the pieces of art. There isn't really much to dislike about this cabin design. Well, actually there was something in the bathroom that you'll probably dislike, but more about that in a minute. I straight away climbed up onto the bed to have a look out of the window. There wasn't much going on outside, but I couldn't wait to see what this would be like when we were moving. The window itself was huge and there was a little ledge in here. You couldn't sit up there, but it was enough space to lean up on if you wanted to have a look out, and sometimes I would put my drink here when I was in bed. I actually did a live stream from here later in the cruise, and I propped up my laptop just on some pillows in this window. There were 2 sets of curtains here, a light one which just stopped the brightest light coming through, and also some blackout curtains. I was really looking forward to waking up with real sunlight instead of the light from a lamp. I really think it makes a difference on how you feel for the entire day. The bed felt very comfortable and I was happy to see bedside tables. It looks to me as though these bedside tables and the wood around the cabin are original to when the ship was built in 1995. She was originally built as Legend of the Seas for Royal Caribbean, and she was bought by Marella in 2017. That said though, some of the things here like the lamps definitely have been upgraded because they have USBs in them. By the bed there was a huge mirror that I loved, and I think this is one of the reasons that the cabin felt so spacious. I can't imagine how difficult it must be for a cruise line if a guest did crack a mirror like this. They would have to replace that pretty quickly, but they are in the middle of the sea. They do have spare versions of lots of things on board, and they do have maintenance teams that are working around the clock. There was another mirror over by the bathroom and 3 more by the desk. The desk area here has a kettle on it, which is very important on any British cruise line. There's a jug too, and water machines on all of the cabin decks. Ours was very close by, and most days we would walk down there and fill this up. I did read one very odd complaint, which was somebody who wanted a glass of water brought to them at 3 in the morning, and they do that, but you'd have to pay a room service charge. That was not good enough for this person. I don't think that is crazy at all. You can drink the water in the tap if you want to, and there are machines on every single deck. I think it's nice that they would do 24-hour room service, and it's not surprising to me that there is a charge. I sometimes think that cruise lines charge for things like this just to make sure that it's only people that really want it that order it, because a lot of food does get wasted on cruise ships. We didn't order room service at any point during this cruise, but if we did, we would have been able to sit very comfortably on this sofa to eat. One of my favourite things about cruising in older cabins is the amount of storage space that they have. I'm not sure why, but in the 90s, cruise lines definitely were more generous with the space. There were so many drawers and shelves in this cabin that we didn't use all of them, and we were on board for a week. Up above the TV there is a safe, but there is no fridge in the cabin at all. I never ever use the fridge when I cruise, and to be honest, I quite like not having the minibar around to tempt me, because sometimes the fridge will have nice snacks in it. I do know that some people like to keep things in the fridge though, so just something to keep in mind. The TV is another thing that has definitely changed multiple times since 1995, and I love looking at the original photos just to see how far the original TVs stuck out. I actually did use the TV a few times on this cruise because at times the Wi-Fi wasn't great. There were a few channels, but there's nothing on demand, so I ended up watching the most random things about monkeys, or I would just watch the map to see where the cruise ships are. It is the data just like this that we show on my website, the Cruise Globe. The cruise ship basically leaves behind a little trail, we capture it, and we let you use it completely for free. You can add all your cruises to the Cruise Globe, you can see your stats, you can share your cruises with your friends, just like how I'm doing with you now. You can see here on this cruise how we went a little bit around and around just to kill time because we weren't traveling very far between the ports. We probably could have made this journey between these two islands in a couple of hours, honestly, but we had to leave port at a certain time, so this is what they did. Just head to thecruiseglobe.com to get started. It is completely free. We just ask please if you can share any of these things, we would really appreciate it. The cabin definitely didn't feel as luxurious as some other cabins that I have stayed in, but it never claimed to be, and I wasn't expecting luxury. You get what it says on the tin with Marella, and I personally really like that. It was around now that our bags arrived and we started to unpack. There was plenty of hanging space in the wardrobe, and these little baskets were very useful for throwing things in when they're not dirty, but they're also not clean. It's like the chair that you have in your room where you put things and they're kind of waiting to be worn again. Normally on a cruise, I'll put my suitcase under the bed, but they didn't fit here, so I put them in the bottom of the wardrobe. That worked quite nicely because when I had dirty clothes, I would just pop them into the suitcase and it basically packed itself. These ocean view cabins do hold up to 4 people, but if you had 4 people in here, the storage might be more of a problem. I've stayed in plenty of cabins in the past with 3 other adults, and none of them ever have enough storage space for that. It's very much designed for maybe a couple of adults and a couple of kids. Marella aren't a very formal cruise line, so although I did bring a couple of dresses, I bought a dress for Dress to Impress night, for example, I mostly was just wearing shorts and t-shirts during the day. It's definitely easier to pack light on a warm weather cruise. I say warm weather, it was around 20 degrees Celsius, which is 68 degrees Fahrenheit most days on this cruise. For me, that is warm, that is sunbathing, that is glorious, that is lovely, but I do understand that to some people 68 degrees Fahrenheit is pretty chilly. For us though, lovely. The cabin felt a similar size to the inside cabins that I've stayed in the past, and apart from the window, there isn't really any difference between this and an inside cabin on board. The decor in all the cabins is exactly the same, although Marella have refit some cabins on the ship more recently than mine. The age of the cabin was showing in a few scuffs and dents on the wood. As long as it's not dirty though, I really don't mind. I would much prefer a cabin that looked older but was clean, rather than it looked new in design and it was dirty. Our cabin was cleaned twice a day by our room steward, and he would always leave chocolates on the pillow before bed. We would sometimes come back to find our mascot Captain Hudson with friends as well, so that was always fun. We had our bed made up as a double, but it is 2 twins, and the room could be arranged with the beds against the walls and the bedside table in the middle if that's what you wanted. I do think the rooms feel more spacious when they are set up as twins, just because you have more usable floor space, but this arrangement worked perfectly for us. In a cabin that's 30 years old, I was expecting to be disappointed by the plug socket situation. I've cruised on ships of a similar age in the past that only had one plug socket for the entire cabin, but I'm very happy to say that we had 2 US sockets, 2 European sockets, and USBs in all of the lamps, which was great. I could charge my phone while I was in bed, and not having to get up to turn off my alarm is always something that I like. After unpacking, I decided to pop into the bathroom quickly, and in some ways, I think this is what lets the cabin down. To pop somewhere is your Britishism of the week. We would always say that we were just popping to the shops, maybe we were popping in to see a friend. It just means that you're going somewhere quickly, kind of casually, probably a bit spontaneously. On this cruise, I would often pop into the snack shack on my way back to the cabin to pick up some of these cookies. Those of you who hate shower curtains will have noticed instantly that there is one here, and there are a few patches around where the cabin definitely needed some TLC. I will say though that it was always clean and perfectly functional. The only real problem we had with the cabin was the water pressure did drop one day, but it came back before you wanted to have a shower, so that wasn't an issue. It's just something that we noticed. One thing I do love about Marella that I have never seen on any other cruise line is that inside their app they have a report a problem with my cabin button, and you can just add in there if you have any issues. I did that on a past Marella cruise where we needed the sofa bed made up, and they came to do it within the hour. The shower itself was pretty powerful, and after a while I did just tuck the shower curtain up out of the way. Even with it out the way, the water didn't go into the main part of the bathroom, so that wasn't a problem. We had plenty of space to put our things to, and with a quick refresh, I think this cabin would be great. As I mentioned earlier, they are refurbishing the cabins on this ship, and they'll be updating, I'm sure, this one soon. Marella do provide all of the bedding, all of the towels. We had one white towel and then one blue pool towel each. They don't have any more towels up by the pool deck. You do have to bring your own ones from your cabin, which is one of the things that does remind me about Marella's more affordable business model. Still, that affordable, all-inclusive business model was the exact reason why I was on board this cruise, and the towel situation certainly didn't cause us any problems. I usually did use the blue towel when I was having a shower, just because that one was a bit bigger, and if I washed my hair, I would use the white towel on my head. I love watching a sail away from a balcony cabin, and I wondered how that would be from an ocean view. Not the same, I was sure of that, but I'm sure it's better than when I'm in an inside cabin, and I have no idea if we have sailed away or not. I did have a quirky inside cabin once with a big screen that showed what was outside, but normally there is no way to know if you're sailing. When we were in port, we had really good 5G from land, which is a massive benefit that I hadn't considered over being in an inside cabin. When you're down there in an inside cabin, the signal can't get through. Cruise ships are big metal boxes, so it made sense that we could get it when we were on the edge of the ship. As we sailed away, I was amazed by how close we were to the water. Balcony cabins are usually higher up, and when I'm in an inside cabin, I can't see out, so I can't see the water. This felt so fun, and it really felt as though we were going so fast. We were so fast and so close to the water. The crew cabins are further down, so they must feel this even more. As we fell asleep, we heard the sound of nothing. We heard absolutely nothing from anywhere. This cabin was completely silent. We didn't hear people walking by, we didn't hear an anchor being dropped, we didn't feel any vibrations. Without looking out the window, I really couldn't tell if we were sailing or not. I hope that this would be the same if we hit bad weather, and we kinda did. I've stayed in some very loud cabins before, so this was such a treat. Waking up slowly with the sunlight coming in was honestly a dream come true, especially after my last cruise. I was starting to think that maybe I might be an ocean view convert, and I wondered why I'd not cruised in cabins like this more often. The reality is most big cruise ships don't have that many ocean view cabins because they tend to prioritize the balconies. Like you can see here on the MSC Opera, who is pretty old, she's got lots and lots of windows, but the newer ship over here to her left has rows and rows and rows of balcony cabins. The prices on cruise ships are really just based on demand, so if there's only a few balcony cabins, they are going to be a lot more expensive. I didn't find any signs of the ship's age in terms of things like leftover ashtrays. I recently found an ashtray in my cabin on a Cunard cruise, and yes, this is an ashtray. Guests could smoke in the cabin when the ship was launched. It wasn't banned until 2013. This actually still has the recesses for cigarettes, and you can even buy this exact same ashtray now. There was nothing like this in the Marella cabin though, not even an old hairdryer, which which is something that does often get left behind because it's harder to remove it than just keep it there. Some of the drawers were a little bit squeaky, but I think I can forgive that. It was on day 3 of our cruise that I started to see the sick bags coming out and being left around the staircases. This is usually a sign that the crew are expecting bad weather, and the captain's announcement did say that we might feel a bit of movement. I'm so happy to say that in our cabin we barely felt a thing. I could tell that we were moving, but things were not rolling. There's no footage of this because I couldn't film anything moving because it wasn't. I booked this cruise just 2 weeks before the sailing, and because of that, it was only £36, which is $45 extra to upgrade to this cabin from an inside cabin for the entire week. That brought my total to £1,032 per person, including flights, transfers, and drinks. That's around $1,300. My guess is that they had more ocean view cabins left to sell than inside cabins, so they would prefer to get something for that upgrade rather than nothing. I checked again closer to the cruise and all of the ocean view cabins were sold out, so I'm very glad that I took the chance and I booked it then. Let me know if you would pay what is basically just £5 a day to upgrade to this cabin. I would do it every single time. It was definitely a clever move too from Marella to offer this so cheap because I enjoyed it so much that I will definitely look to book this cabin again, even if it is more expensive. I'll be bringing you a video soon all about this cruise outside the cabin. It'll show you the rest of the ship, the entertainment, the food and more, so please make sure you're subscribed just so that you don't miss that video. To find out what it was like in my rocky inside cabin on my last cruise and why I was so desperate to feel the sun this time, check out this video next. This cabin is on the only ocean liner left in the entire world, and it's definitely not what you think of when you think of an inside cabin. See you there.